What up, ladies and gentlemen? This is just a quick intro for our regular viewers and subscribers. You may be wondering, why the heck is Dice & Dragons reviewing a movie? Well, you can find more information in our channel update, which is popping up above my head right now. The long and the short of it is, I like reviewing the background setting for games. You saw it when I did Realms of Terranoth. I reviewed everything about the Runebound universe. As we are going to be covering Big Trouble in Little China, I figured why not experiment with something. Let's try reviewing the movie instead of paying lip service to the 2 pages that you get in the actual rulebook. Now, guys, if you like it, please let us know. We may do more of this stuff for the licensed board games that we've covered. And if you guys don't like it, we may do less. But it's very important to stress, this will not change your weekly board game release. This will still be releasing on Thursday. This is just an extra thing that we're doing for you because I wanted to try my hand at it. And please let us know what you think. Now I'm getting out of here and letting you get on with the video. Hope you enjoy it. What up, gamers and movie fans? Today on Dice & Dragons, we are doing our first episode of Tales from the Silver Screen. Now, this is a new series we're starting where we are going to be doing movie reviews. And for those of you that are new to the channel, finding us for the first time with this movie review, we are primarily a board game focused channel, but as we've been seeing a lot more in recent years, we get some great licensed board games, and we want to expand out to cover more of geek culture. So we figured with our upcoming review of the board game Big Trouble in Little China, let's make that our first movie review. So without further ado, we are going to move into a review of John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China that was first released in 1986. So grab a drink, grab a bite. I mean, what's movie without popcorn? And stick with us for a discussion on Big Trouble in Little China. Welcome back, everyone. Now, this review is going to be very spoiler light. I really don't want to dive too far into the story, but you can't discuss a movie without talking a little bit about the story and some of the things that happen. And for those of you that are wondering if, you should check out this movie, maybe you've played the game, maybe you've just heard your friends talking about it, we'll give you a little bit of background as to the overall plot of the movie. The story opens with Jack Burton driving his truck, the Pork Chop Express, and after he makes a delivery in California, he places a bet during a game of chance with his good friend and restaurant owner Wang Chi. And after successfully winning the bet, Wang Chi doesn't have the money to pay up. And from that point on, Jack decides that he's going to be sticking with him like glue until he gets his money. And after a trip to the airport and an encounter with a Chinese gang, then them chasing down that gang to recover an object that was stolen, well, Jack gets involved in all of the crazy going-ons in Little China as he encounters David Lopan, his soldiers, the Three Storms, and of course, who can forget Kim Cattrall as Gracie Law. Now, that's all I want to talk about with regards to the plot. You can definitely find some more information out there on, Wikipedia or anything like that if you really want to dive deep into it. But that is the overview. We are basically following the good old hometown Midwest American hero, the truck driver, as he gets involved in all this Eastern mysticism, because it's right, David Lopan is a mystical character if you didn't know. And it's a lot of fun to actually watch the movie through sort of Jack Burton's point of view, because he definitely is the main character and the character that we're going to be spending the most time with. Now, as I'm watching this movie with 2018 eyes, I've also want to consider the movie as a 1986 movie. So when I get to my review of the movie, I'm going to give it a review based on, kind of what I think about it today, not necessarily digging it for things like special effects, but maybe talking a little bit more just about some plot issues and some characterizations that don't necessarily hold up as well. I did not watch this movie when I was growing up. I only watched it just recently, so that is definitely skewing my opinion a bit. Now let's talk a little bit about the characters. Well, you can't talk about Big Trouble in Little China without talking about Jack Burton. And you just gotta love Jack Burton, because while he presents himself as this big, badass, tough guy, he's still very lovable and likable, and you can tell that he really believes in doing the right thing, even though it seems like he's just there with Wang for the money. When his friend gets in trouble, he decides to stick with him through the end, and I really like that about his character. I also like the fact that Jack, well, he takes himself seriously, doesn't seem to take himself too seriously, and even though there's all these crazy mystic goings on in Chinatown, he's willing to believe his friends and just go with it. When you look at Wang Chi, he almost is like the main character of the story. Jack Burton is clearly our POV character, but Wang Chi ends up being very heroic. You have his fiance in there, Mao Yin, and he's definitely really one of the driving forces in the movie. He's very capable, and something that you don't necessarily expect when you first meet the character, and that's something that I really liked about him. Now, I don't want to talk too much about all of the characters. I'll talk about the ones that have, the most screen time, and that's definitely Jack, Wang Chi, and then we have, of course, Gracie Law, Kim Cattrall's character. And I have to say, I really liked Gracie Law. She felt a lot like the Lois Lane, kind of that Lois Lane stereotype to me there. She's strong, she's capable, she's a lawyer, and while she does seem to get herself in danger, and, if you're looking at 1970s, 1980s, like a lot of female characters, they do happen to get themselves in trouble. I did appreciate how capable she was and how nothing really fazed her. Now the last character I'm going to talk about when it comes to the main characters is Egg Shen, the Chinese sort of mystic god that we have going through this. Egg Shen, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, is a Chinese sorcerer that is pledged to oppose David Lo Pan, our villain. And Egg Shen is really sort of that conduit for us, the audience, into the mysticism. He explains who and what Lo Pan is. And he's also just a really fun character. What I do like about it is that even though he seems a little bit ridiculous and incompetent, he still is very capable. There's just sort of a whimsical air to it, despite the fact that everything going on is very serious. I think Egg kind of feels like everything is just a little bit ridiculous, and that's sort of shown by his name. Now, there are a lot of other supporting side characters that I do really enjoy. Eddie and Margot are fantastic, but they don't really get a lot of screen time. But they're very good characters, they're well developed in their own right, and we get just enough exposition so that we know who they are. Now that we've discussed the heroes, we need to talk about the villains, and we only really have one main villain throughout this whole movie, which is David Lo Pan. And I do want to talk about James Hong's portrayal of Lo Pan specifically here. I'll talk a little bit more about the other actors when we just make some more comments about the direction and the way the whole movie is put together. But what I really liked about James Hong is that despite the fact that he had to play the very old Lo Pan and a lot of the ridiculous stuff going on around him, he does give Lo Pan this air of confidence, and there's a marked difference between the old man version of him and the fully powered mystic sorcerer. And he is able to provide some nice little points of comedy, but he's also very serious, despite the fact that everything going on may seem a little bit ridiculous to Jack Burton, our hero, and maybe even Lo Pan himself. He knows what his goal is, and he is going to be pursuing it no matter what, and there's always this air of danger and confidence about him, and I really like that. Next, we really have the three storms: thunder, lightning, and rain. Those are Lo Pan's three servants, and while they are definitely a highlight of the movie in terms of their abilities and what they can do, they are definitely your stereotypical 1986 henchmen, and that's a big drawback for me. We have no idea who they are. Are they current day servants of Lo Pan? Were they cursed with him by the emperor, and that's why they're still there? They were ancient Chinese that got powers and have served them for millennia. Sorry, I know that's a little bit of a spoiler, but like I said, you can't really talk about a movie without getting into spoilers. In any case, we don't get enough info on them, and while they're cool, they're very much, kind of stereotypical caricatures. One being the strong man, one being the fast and agile one, and the other one with the best sort of mystic powers. And those are your villains, and while I do like our main villain, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the three storms. There just wasn't enough there. Now let's talk about just the overall direction of the movie and sort of the script and the plot itself. And I'm going to focus on what I like about the movie and then get into my dislikes. So first and foremost, I really like the way the movie was directed by John Carpenter. The story flows very well despite being a little bit ridiculous. He does make sure to spend enough time giving us just enough exposition to know what's going on. And I do like the fact that it doesn't quite make sense because we're really focused on following Kurt Russell's character, Jack Burton, through the whole thing. And it doesn't really make sense to him. He's just there to help out a friend. So that little bit of direction and following the script really works well in terms of keeping us confused, but also giving us a sense that maybe this is really happening. If we were in that situation, maybe we would feel that way. Now, where I've got to critique sort of the story and the direction is that there was a lot of stereotypes in this movie. And coming from 1986, that's to be expected when you look at some of the characters' names, just even ways that they interact with each other. You do see the stereotypical portrayal like of women as a damsel in distress. I do like that Gracie Law is just a little bit above that, but the heroine Malian falls distinctly into the damsel in distress 110% category. And there are some characterizations that could be seen as a little bit racist, like when Jack Burton goes to Egg Shen's place and Wang says, hey, he's a very rich man. The first thing he does is say, well, this is just full of junk. And, Wang does sort of compensate for that, saying, hey, you wouldn't understand. This is our culture. But it doesn't play very well in 2018, and the movie definitely isn't very culturally sensitive. Well, I do like the fact that John Carpenter got to make his martial arts movie. The fight scenes, when you compare to today's standard, or if even you look at Jackie Chan films of old, the fight scenes aren't good. He probably should have worked with someone, brought somebody else over from China to have some better fight scenes. But the one thing I can say is that this movie is definitely a B kung fu movie and sort of a horror action comedy. And in that respect, the fight scenes work. So there is definite, like a whole overall feel to the movie. But if you're expecting something more, you're definitely not going to be getting it. And that's what I have to say about the direction. We talked about the good and the bad. Now let's just talk about the story overall. Now the good thing about the story is it makes sense with its own internal logic. I do like the fact that Jack Burton, being the strong American guy, actually doesn't end up being completely the hero of the day. He does get some nice, good hero moments, but he's also a little bit of a buffoon. He's sort of bumbling into this whole situation, and he doesn't know what's going on. And he plays it tougher than he actually is when it comes to firing guns and things like that. And I thought it was kind of great that he even manages to sort of take himself out of certain scenes and render himself irrelevant. But I do like the fact that it's his earnest qualities and his good nature that kind of keeps propelling the story forward and keeps getting the other characters into good situations. Now, the thing I don't necessarily like about the movie is that, well, the plot is definitely very thin. We've got to take its own internal logic. We get very little bits and pieces of exposition. But it's also a 1986 movie, and we're supposed to take everything with a grain of salt. But I do think that the plot and the storyline could have been developed more, maybe with some flashback sequences and some explanation as to why characters like Egg have interacted with Lo Pan in the past, and why Egg Shen specifically is devoted his life to opposing Lo Pan. Now, that's what I like about the movie. That's what I did like about the movie. Let's get into the final score. Now, I'm going to give this movie two scores, a 1986 score and a 2018 score. We'll start with the 2018 score, looking at this from current movie standards and also just my own personal script writing standards. Well, this movie was great in 1986. It doesn't hold up well today. It has earned its place as a cult classic, but I can definitely understand why it didn't do very well at the box office. It is a ridiculous kung fu movie B-class movie romp with those elements of horror and comedy. And while I do appreciate the way the special effects were done, they were a little bit shaky in some places, but overall, I do like the John Carpenter feel that he brings to it with the creature designs and things like that. But it just doesn't hold up quite that well for me in terms of just seeing it now for the first time. I'm giving it a 6.5. Now, if I go back in time to when I was watching movies in the 80s, this movie is a solid 7.5. The effects are good. The story is very much up to the standards of the time. And the ridiculous nature of it, the likability of the characters, would definitely make it something that, upon repeated viewings, with the amount of quotable lines and just the way that people act, would definitely make it a classic. And I give it a 7.5 based on being an older movie. Now, if you're going to watch this movie and you're going to look at it as a movie that was made today in 2018, it may not be the case for you. If you miss those 80s styles of filmmaking, you want to watch something that's ridiculous, that's funny, that you're not going to take not going to take too seriously, you need to watch Big Trouble in Little China. Well, that's it for our first review, our first episode of Tales from the Silver Screen. You can find links to our other related videos popping up above. Stay here as we're going to keep expanding, well, not stay here, we'll stay with the channels. We're going to keep expanding some of our content and expect to see some book reviews and other movie reviews forthcoming. You can find information on all of our social media feeds down below, and the videos should be popping up anytime now. So as what we like to do here on Dice and Dragons, we're going to grab a drink, we're going to grab a bite, and get back to watching movies. Hopefully we'll see you guys next time.